It's Mike from O'Tools. We're here with BK's Lowrider S, and we're going to install some Brooklyn 10-inch Indian Larry risers with their 2-inch bar. So it's going to be a nice little hot setup. Big difference. Alright, so we're gonna swap out the stock setup, which is about 8 inches altogether, with a I think it's a 2.5, 3-inch bar with 5-inch risers, which we're gonna bring it up to 12-inch total, which is a little more of a comfortable ride. And it's gonna come back a little bit towards you too, so you're not pinching your shoulders with these smaller. You're leaning forward a lot more with these. With those bigger bars, you're going to be more in a relaxed position, but still in an aggressive position to ride. So it should be a pretty good install. We got 10-inch risers here with a 2-inch Indian Larry bar. It's actually a pretty sweet setup. The gauge mounts all up in there with stainless steel ARP bolts that they sent. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the seat off. We got to demount the tank, fish the wires out of the frame, unplug them, undo your mirrors, your master. You want to drain the master cylinder out. I'll show you how we'll do that. We'll vacuum flush it out, disconnect the clutch cable, and then we'll pull off the bars and the risers with the speedo. We'll unbolt all that stuff, and I'll show you how you can do all that. Yeah, just unbolting the front tank mount here helps with a little flexible head 9/16 ratcheting wrench. Helps you get in there a lot easier. Now we're gonna disconnect the fuel line, which I usually leave the front tank bolt in, and then prop it up just a wee bit. Undo your vent down here, your fuel pump plug, which is right here. There it is, fuel pump plug, and then just, it's a quick connect. So you just pull up on the collar, and out comes the. I want to thank BK for leaving the tank as empty as possible. Makes things a lot easier. And then you just lift it right up and out of the way. That's all for the tank. Yeah, there's like nothing in here. Yeah, on these newer Softails and a lot of the new touring bikes, you don't have a crossover either that goes underneath the frame, so it makes things so much easier when you're taking the tank off. It makes no mess, practically no mess, and no clamps that you have to deal with either. So to get at your hand control wires, your speedo wires, all that stuff, it's you just pull this boot back. I'm going to actually unbolt this Torx and this Torx up here, and that's just to get the hard lines for the ABS to move a little bit, to get them out of the way, because they kind of come up over the boot, so it makes things a little bit difficult to get the wires out of there. So I just like to remove them out of preference. Saves you in the long run of swearing. So that one just comes out like that. This one is up in the front towards the neck more. I don't know if we can get a good shot in there. And that just helps with moving these lines out a little bit. Now that you got those loose and you can move them out of the way, you can pull this boot back out of the frame, and there's all your wires.
Is this as much of a pain in the ass to pull these out of the frame as it is on the dyno?
Nowhere's near that bad.
It doesn't look like they're in there as tight.
No, and there's a lot less. So here's your throttle, speed sensor, this connector back here. This is your speedo setup. These are your right hand controls. These are your left hand controls. This is your ABS. Helps too that the wires are a lot smaller. Yep, we got special guest here, Julie. Right now I'm just trying to depress the lock because my fingers are too fat. I can't get my fingertips in there. So I need a little screwdriver. Just depress it undo both the throttle sensor and the speedo. You gotta be careful though, because these things will break pretty easily. Now everything is unplugged. I can actually just unbolt the bars as an assembly and pull everything out. Yeah, and this is your accessory if you had heated grips. If you want to run heated grips.
It's too fancy for me, man.
That's what God made gloves for, right?
Yeah.
Now I got all this unplugged. I kind of want to drain the front master cylinder. That way it makes less of a mess later on when we do the brake lines and all that stuff. So you're looking at a mess if you don't drain it. So what I'll do is I'll crack or pop off the master cylinder cap, suck all that out of there, and then I'll crack open the bleeders on both calipers and suck all the brake fluid out through the calipers. That way it's pretty much empty by the time you remove the lines. And you want to be careful with DOT4 here, because DOT4 eats everything. It's a pain eater. I'm just going to grab the vacuum. We're just going to suck out what brake fluid's left in the master cylinder here. And then I'll move on to the calipers. Your bleeders are on the top of these calipers here. It's a 5/16 bleeder. I usually like to just crack them loose while get some oomph behind it and make sure they're going to get loose for you. Or the open end, I'm sorry. And then turn on the bleeder. And you'll see once the fluid stops coming, then you know you're pretty much dry. Like that. And we move on to the other side. Now there's probably not much on this side. A little bit. It looks like it's pretty dry. This is my personal DX. She's been good to me. It's an 01 with, I think it's got 56,000 on it. She's treated me good so far. Profile video? Yeah, I guess a profile video is coming soon. So now that we got the bike up in the air, we drain the fluid for the calipers and the master cylinder. You gotta come up here to remove your clutch cable. You gotta slide. What it is, you want to slide up your cover here. You want to collapse the cable, pop the lock, collapse the cable, put the lock back in, and there's a little brass tab in here. You want to bend the tab up. That's what keeps the cable from popping out of there. Then you're gonna pop that up, and then pop. So the cable's out of the carrier now, and now all you gotta do is pop each side. This is when 2 screwdrivers come in handy. Pop this side up, pop this side up, and then remove the top cable. So that's your removal of your top cable there. Take a pair of retaining pliers. Take the clip off for your pin for your lever. Take the pin out. And take the, there you go. And take your bushing out. And pop the lever off. Save the bushing because you're going to replace that. The pin. Now the bolt's holding the the housing together are T25s, and the clutch perch is T27s. So we're gonna bolt the clutch perch. And it just slides out of there. We'll set it up to the side. Now we can undo the housing. Now that just comes out. The top cover just comes off like that, and then you can slide. Hopefully we can get those in through there. Maybe not. We might have to take these apart, which I think I'm gonna do. Make it a little easier. So you always want to remember where your colors are at. The pin is labeled 1 through 4. So on this one, it's red. It's like a red orangish color. That's in your first slot. Black green's in your second. Red white or white red is in your third, and white black is in your fourth. These ones they're nice and they're terrible at the same time, because they're all you do is I had to actually make this tool, spring steel. I just put a file edge on it. Basically, you want to go in from the front side here, or the front side of the connector, and you'll feel a little tab, and then you'll be able to pop the release and then pull the pins out. Now these two wires, these are your CAN bus wires. You always want to keep them, make sure they stay twisted. No more than you don't want more of an inch gap where they're not twisted. So then it ends up leading. It could give you false readings on things, and ends up with funky things with your electronics, with your sensors. And now I should be able to cinch these through, hopefully with no issues. And just like that. We'll set these off to the side. Now this one's your instrument cluster, so we're just going to leave that attached because that doesn't go through the bars. The other side here is your right side. So you got actually 5 wires over here. So you have the same 4-pin connector with the same colorway, and then you got another 1 wire gray-white on its own connector. And then you got your throttle wire with your accessory, or throttle sensor wire with your accessory hooked up to it. I will disconnect the accessory plug, or unhook the connector on this one, just because it's bulky. I will leave this one attached because you can usually slide that through with no issues. But this one kind of leaves because it's just 2 wires and they're flimsy. And this connector usually snags on everything, so I usually take that one off. And I do is because these are they're also color coded, white and black, and they are designed that way. So I always mark the white side, and I just kind of carve a W into the side of the connector, tell me which side the white goes on, and I plug it back in. So this is to get this lock undone, you kind of got to spread the sides out a little bit and just pop the lock up like so, and then come in from the front side. Now these ones are a little bit of a pain, kind of got to get it just right. Usually like a wedge tool. There you go. There's one. There you go, and there's 2. So that should make it slide through a lot easier, taking that one off. Now that we got that wire depinned, we're also going to depin those because it's kind of a hassle as well. So same thing as the other side, or the left side here. You want to go in from the front side, kind of pop the release if you can get it. Come on, this one's being... Oh, there it is. Nope. Now we got all those connectors undone. Unbolt the brake line. I usually wrap, I know we drain the system, but there's always residual still in there. So I just kind of wrap up the brake line and just kind of tuck it so it's going to be out of the way somewhat. And then we're going to undo the brake caliper, or brake master cylinder. Still some fluid in there. Like the other side, these are T27 for the master cylinder and T25 for the handlebar controls. Now, the throttle side grip just slides off the throttle sensor. Now this is going to be a little bit of a pain because you kind of got to pull both on both wires at the same time, or the sensor and the wires, the hand controls, and kind of feed them through. There's your control housing and your throttle sensor. Now before we go and loosen these up, you want to loosen up your bolts, or nuts I should say, for your risers, because we are going to replace those. 3/4. Now the way this bike is set up, these are just nuts that are on there instead of bolts. And before I take it all the way apart, I want to loosen these clamp bolts. Now usually you can just buzz them out of there with that, but nope. Alright, now that I got them all loose, I can buzz them out with the gun. That goes the whole top clamp and the bars. Alright. That's what they look like when they come out of there. You got a nut on there. Lock nut, I should say. Come on. Great success. Alright, what we're doing here is we're going to run the throttle sensor through. I'm going to try to run it through at the same time and see how this goes without any string. Seeing how it's such a small bar and not many bends. Looks like I should be able to do it. There we go. I'll run that through. Pretty simple. Like that. Run that through. Now there's, on these throttle sensors from the factory, they come stock with an O-ring. On a lot of these aftermarket bars, I already test fitted this one with a throttle sensor that I had cut the wires off of, and it's a tight fit with the keyways here. So I usually just cut the O-ring off, and we'll just slide that through, and it's a tight fit in there. Thank you, Indy and Larry, for making that so easy. Alright, now we got to do the other side. Now this side is just obviously just the left hand control. So just feed it through. Let's see if I can grab the wires without a pick. Maybe. There we go. And these ones are that simple. Not too bad. While I was doing that, well, right before I did that, I mounted up the risers just for mock-up. Just want to see how they would go. You got to unbolt this, obviously. We're going to have to mount the speedo cluster and gauges, or the indicator lights in here first. I just wanted to bolt it up and see how it was going to fit. But we'll get the bar in there and the indicators and mount everything up, and we'll see how it goes. Alright, so now we gotta unbolt the gauge cluster from the old riser clamp. So which is just 4 T25s. We'll just pop those out.
Good.
All right, what I'm going to do now is just put the connectors back on the wires. And like I said before, you always want to keep these twisted. Yeah, red, orange goes to 1, black goes to 2, white, red goes to 3, and white, black goes to 4. Now they are numbered, I'm not just making that up. There are numbers on there. Also, I'm going to put this one back in for your heated gear lead, or heated grips if you were to do them. So
Hell yeah, brother.
so this is the one I marked myself with the white indicator where that goes, and then just snap that lock back into place, and then there it is. Now we can throw the bars on. Now I'm just going to put 4 bolts in here now just to get the bars up on the bike, because it's kind of difficult to hold the bars, the bolts, the riser all together one-handed or together. Looks pretty even so far. I mean, we can adjust it a little later, but
Yeah.
want to get as close as you can. Now this is the difficult part. Always helps to have an extra set of hands. That should be good. Definitely a lot higher than the stock setup. So now we're going to throw the grips on there and glue the one side in. Alright, we're going to throw these grips on. Harley S by sold from Deadbeat Customs. Shout out to them. Good looks. It's got the little gold end on them. They're pretty grippy. I forgot what the name of these ones are. Now you kind of want to get it all in one motion with the grip, with the glue. And then clean up the excess coming out the end, so you don't want that on your control housing. And we did a test run of this grip beforehand. You probably don't even need the glue, but the glue definitely helps. Now you want to do the other side. Basically the throttle side, you just, because it's splined for the throttle sensor down in there, you're probably not going to be able to see it, but you basically just want to match up the owner-ness how this one is on the other side. And then you can throw your cap back on. You want a little bit of play when you're doing this. You don't want it to be like this, because then you'll end up sticking. So you want a little bit of play, back and forth movement. And these are just the T25s again. Come on. You always want to give it a couple whacks. Make sure it's not going to stick on you. Got a little bit of play there, and you got no stickage. Now do the other side. Probably want to just come right up to the edge of that grip there. These ones don't have like a lock for the housing. You want to try to line it up as evenly as possible with the other side. You could always go in and adjust it later. You know, it doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat here. Come on. There we go. Just gonna give the mirror a good squonk. The lines and the clutch cable came from Deadbeat. I believe they're LA chopper setup. Nice steel black braided lines. Pretty sweet looking. And we're gonna put those in, along with Moon's MC brake lever and clutch lever. Yeah, I actually run these on my bike. I have them on mine. We'll grab our bushing and our pin. All right. And what we'll do is run the line up through the tree. That's where the stock one went. Feed it through the little eyelet hook in the front. Put a little bushing in. Pop it in the housing. Throw our pin in. And then our retaining ring. What you want to do is you want to take off your stock clutch cable. There's a little cover that keeps everything in place. It just pops off. You just pull on it, and then you can discard your stock cable. We are going to need the lock out of it though, actually. So we got to pop that back out. A little screwdriver helps with that. And you just kind of squeeze it together. Come on. You get out of there. There you go. We'll install it on the new cable. Don't push it all the way on, because you have to feed it up through, then push it through. Now the new cable's still got the same stock mechanism with the flange on there. Little brass tab, I should say. Pop that guy back on there. And then you gotta feed your stock blower cable on there, which this just pops down in there. Now this is the fun part. Trying to get this guy. Alright. That's in there. It's sitting in the groove. Now you just gotta bend the tab over. There you go. That's simple. Now that we got the clutch cable on and everything, we can adjust it, the cable down here. Now you want to make sure you stay collapsed. You want to do your adjustment down here, which is you're going to want to do. You want to bottom out your adjustment screw. I usually bounce it off the bottom there about 3-4 times just to let you know you're there. And then I back it out about a half a turn. And then I lock the jam nut. Now to finish the adjustment, you pop the lock back out. Squeeze the lever a couple times. Make sure that's where you want it. Throw the lock in. It feels pretty good to me. There's a little bit more free play in there than I like, so I'm gonna take a little more out. To me, that feels pretty good. You got about an 1/8 inch of free play. That's about what you want. And then slide your cover back over. Throw your clips back on the frame. Make sure you don't pinch your oil line. There you go. And your clutch cable's all set. Now we can button this back up. While we're here, you always want to put a new gasket in. Don't try to reuse your old one. It never works out. So that, you clean it out real good with a rag. I already did, but you want to make sure you get all the excess oil out in that groove. And you're just going to pop it in, just like so. Now remember your derby covers. Shout out to Indian Larry for this beautiful one. But your derby covers, they're always indicated on these M8 Softails where the top bolt's going to go. So there's a keyway on the primary cover and on the derby. And you just line those two up, and you have yourself a cover. Now you want to go around in like a star pattern, going torquing these up. Torque's not high on these. I just go about hand tight with them. There is a torque spec. I think it's only like 70 inch-pounds or something like that. It's not high. Now I put anti-seize on the threads because this is a cover that comes off quite often for doing service work. So you don't want those bolts to seize in there, and do not use Loctite because you'll be fighting them and breaking bolts every time. And one good squeeze. Seems good to me. Now we'll move on to the brake. We're going to add some wire extensions on here. The stock's not quite long enough for this setup now. So we'll throw some wire extensions on there and then throw them back underneath the frame here, or back into the frame I should say, and then we'll just go on and move on to the brake. So we cleaned up the wires here, we put some conduit on everything coming out of the bars. Then I had to fight because I had to run the wires up into the fairing a little bit and then back into the frame, just because the stock wires were just a little too short. And then the wire extensions are just a little too long, so I had to finagle how they ran. So I ran the wires up and then came back and then got everything back in the rubber housing here, and the brake line's bolted back up. And now we're going to do the brake line junction block. Now, you always want to put a fender protector on your front fender, either dealing with any kind of brake fluid or wrenches near it. And I'm going to put a rag under here because this is probably going to drip. But there's a junction block under here. So there's the junction block here. This is where your two ABS lines come out of the junction block back to the module. So we got to unbolt these two from the junction block, and then from there we can just unbolt each brake line to the calipers, and then we can just pull the whole junction block away because we're going to replace this one with a new one from Deadbeat. Flare nut wrench helps out with the unbolting these because it doesn't strip the fittings. It kind of wraps around the lines, and they're actually millimeter on this bike. One's 10, one's 12 mil. Now once you get them loose, you basically can just undo them by hand and just pull the lines out of the junction block. I guess I did a pretty good job draining because nothing's dripping there. So then I'm going to do is unbolt the junction block, which is, I believe that's 5/32 Allen. And then I'm just going to let the junction block hang until I unbolt the calipers, or bolt the lines at the calipers. Now whenever you're doing an ABS or anything with the brakes with an ABS system, you want to do an ABS bleed, which most guys are probably going to have to come to a dealership to do that. Not a lot of guys have access outside the dealership to do that. There is aftermarket shops that have access to that. You just got to be mindful of that when anytime you're doing brakes. I believe these banjo bolts are 12 mil. So this is, they got fluid still in them. And you always want to replace your crush washers as well. Do the other side here. I'll grab that line because once I unbolt it, it's just going to go flying. That's one of the crush washers. You're going to end up throwing that out because you're going to replace it. And now you can pull that all out. And this is your whole front brake line assembly. Now you want to clean the threads out on these banjos. This is a fairly new bike, so you don't have to really go too crazy with this one. But now you want to make sure it's free of debris. free of any old fluid, because this .4 likes to gel up if you let it sit for too long. So you want to just make sure it's cleaned out, which these are fairly clean. So now this is the modular setup from Deadbeat sent us. There's your junction block, so we're going to bolt that up first with our lines, and then we're going to bolt up our calipers lines, and then we're going to bolt up the master cylinder line last. And then we'll go back and bleed the whole system. I'll show you how to ABS bleed it as well. And this whole kit comes with new junction block and all the new banjo gaskets. So you want to find the orientation, obviously for each caliper, pointing down towards the caliper. Bolt goes through the center. It's cut out for the head, recessed for the head I should say, with a nylon bushing in there. Then you got your big 12 mil on this side, your 10 mil on this side, and then your front master cylinder goes in right here. So we're actually going to bolt it up. Throw a little blue Loctite on there. If I can find my blue Loctite. I just had it. There it is. Let's bolt it up. Let me give it a snug. Now, being these brake lines are flared, you don't need anything to put on the threads or anything like that. So once you tighten it up, it actually meets up with the other housing. Get it started and get the right position on there, they can go right in. Alright. Now we'll do the front master line. Feed it through the stock location there. Now that's going to come up just like that. So we can just let that do a little hanger there. Now we'll do calipers. Let's get new banjo gaskets. Let's get them started. So I think that's going to work the best at a 90 right there. All right. Now throw your clips back on for the brake line, or ABS line, wire I should say, not line. Bolt up the master cylinder. New bolts. So seeing how we're going to replace these with Moon MC levers, shout out to them. We're going to take this lever out, the stock lever. So you're just going to take your retaining clip. Oh, let me pop it out a little farther. And the lever just comes right out, and we're going to replace it with the Moon's MC one. Which these are some slick levers. I do like these. Pop the pin back in. Take the retaining clip. Throw the retaining clip back on there. And that's that. Now we're going to go over with the cap. Now on this bike it doesn't apply so much, but on the older bikes the brake switch was a chintzy little button. Now they're like almost like a hard plastic ramp, but you actually had to depress your lever going in, otherwise you would snap the brake switch. And torque that up. I think we're gonna have to readjust this one too. Tighten this up with a 14 mil. There we go. Now we can bleed the system. All right, we're gonna grab our vacula again and our 5/16 wrench, if I can find it in this mess. And we're gonna start on the left side because that's our primary side. And then we're gonna work our way over to the right. And we'll crack it open. And then we watch our level. Going down pretty good there. You'll see it go down. Give it a little assistance. I'm gonna go to the other side now. You don't want it to let it go dry because then otherwise you're gonna have to start the process all over again. And that's pretty much the premises of a basic brake bleed, just to get all the air out of the system. And I usually go back and forth one last time while holding the brake down to get the extra air pocket out of there. So what we're gonna do is throw the cap back on there, throw the tank back on, do an ABS bleed, and we'll get BK out of here. All right, so this is a final install, or I should say the end project, or end of the project, or whatever you want to call it. The bars on there, they sit real nice. Yeah, man, all set. It's ready to rip. All right, this is final bar setup. You're sitting actually in like a upright position, still aggressive, but it's comfortable. I mean, I'm pretty short, but this is about 12 inches altogether, and I'm at like shoulder height. It's pretty comfortable for me.